Good morning. Great to be together for a few minutes today. I'm just reaching over here for my book. I was going to read a couple of these short stories. What a great weekend. I am beyond words thankful for God's mercy, His faithfulness. And I just going to read a couple quick reports. I'm going to be in Proverbs 4 here in just a minute. But let me just read something that people can't relate to. If you've grown up in the city, you face things that people from the country can't even imagine. When we started the church, our town was only 1,000 people in Wildomar, 10,000 in Lake Elsinore, the next town north, and 1,000 in Marietta. And now there's a couple of 100,000 in that area now. But I'd meet people, and they'd say, I've had several people say, "Aren't you scared out here?" And I said, "Scared of what?" They said, "Well, there's nothing out here." And there was a lot of acreage, few houses being built, but not many. And it was all very open. And I grew up, especially in my teen years, out in the woods and open. And even before that, when we lived in sort of a city, it was we went camping a lot. We were in the mountains a lot, on water, the beach. We were outdoors a lot. And I'd look at these people who moved, and where'd you come from? Somewhere in Anaheim or Los Angeles or Watts or whatever. And I'd say, "Man, weren't you scared living there?" It's just what you're comfortable with. And people can't relate. But here's a story. In the 1830s, people coming west, settling the West, miners, trappers, hunters. A couple of trappers were arguing who was the bravest. And a grizzly bear had attacked a trapper not far from their camp, and he fired at the grizzly, and the grizzly started running up. And as I come into the story, they fired on the animal, and it took off straight up the hill for the assembled trappers. One of the men shouted, "Now you two can find out who's the bravest," because that grizzly bear was mad and coming right toward their little camp area. Without hesitation, both men accepted the challenge, leaped to their feet, and ran toward the enraged beast. Meek, M-E-E-K, the guy's name, the faster of the two, had his muzzle loader in one hand. A muzzle loader, for you who don't know, it was not a repeating rifle. It was one that you loaded through the barrel. When you fired, you had to clean the barrel, put a new bullet, and new powder and everything in it. And it was a single shot gun. It wasn't a repeater. And he had his muzzleloader in one hand and a hickory switch in the other. He ran up to the bear and whipped him on top of the head with the switch. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Like the Indians would say, he was counting coup. He was proving to be brave if he lived. The huge silver-tipped bear turned his way, exposing his sharp teeth and 6-inch claws, and then charged. In a flash, Meek raised his weapon, fired directly into the massive beast. Grizzlies are so tough they've been known to run 50 yards after having their heart blown out by a rifle bullet. They've been known to kill a man even after they themselves were technically dead. With no time to reload, Meek was in a tight spot. The big silver tip came on and dropped dead right at the feet of Meek. Fight on, the story says. Just a guy who says, he got in that, his own stupidity. But to just step up and say, I'm gonna do this. Now, in some cases, people might say that wasn't brave, that was stupid, and I think that would be the case out in the woods on several occasions. When I was in the woods, I ran across bear, and I was pretty careful, especially if I saw them before they saw me. But one time I happened to be in the woods pretty much alone working. I worked for the Forest Service, and I was on my own this day, and I was working in wherever a spot on the side of a hill, and I heard this just crashing in the brush and forest. If you've never been in true lumber country woods, you can't imagine it, but just trees thick, 2, 3, 4 foot diameter trees. And because of the canopy of tree limbs in the top, it wasn't as thick a brush as you might find in the East Coast or in some areas where there were no trees. There was some brush in the bottom, but you could run through the woods and just avoid brush pretty easy. A lot of times there'd be a cushion, a pad of pine needles that had been dropped over hundreds of years. And so, but you could hear something running, and I just stopped what I was doing and turned around, and two two big bear cubs. They weren't new babies. They were pretty good sized, and they're tumbling and running and chasing each other. And I just sat very still because two bear cubs don't usually run through the woods by themselves. And sure enough, pretty quick, here comes over this hill through this area, but where the little ones ran, this great big old mama bear. And I was smart enough to not try and go hit that bear on the head with the switch. I didn't have a gun, for one thing. But another time I walked into a meadow this way, and at the other end of the meadow there was a big old bear. And it was, there's a lot of berries in the woods where we grew up, and apple trees, wild apples, and lots of berries. And so this bear was probably eating some of those. But a big meadow, maybe, I don't know, the size of half of a football field, 50 yards square, maybe smaller than that, probably smaller than that. But I walked into it this way, and right over there's this big old bear, and he just stood up and on his hind legs to get a good look at me and just stood there. And definitely my height or taller, probably taller. And I just thought, well, it's a good point for me to just stop and not do anything. And that bear stood there looking at me and decided I wasn't a threat and went back to whatever he's doing. And I tiptoed back into the trees to get away from the bear. Another time we had a bear in town, and it was getting into people's fruit orchards, and they'll tear up. It's not just they pick the apples; they'll break the branches right off the apple trees. And other trees too, but especially apples. And this bear was causing so much trouble. So the Forest Service people went out. They had a big like a culvert, a metal tube, maybe 6 feet long, and a great big one. And his back was screened, and the front had a trap door. And I wasn't there when they trapped it, but somehow they got it in that thing and trapped it. Then they got it into the back of a pickup, drove way up in the woods, and I got to go along with him to turn this bear loose. And I thought, I want to picture that thing up close and see what happens when it goes out of the truck. And so we're thinking, now where are we going to go if that bear comes at us? What are we going to do? And so the truck doors were open, so if we needed to, we could dive into the truck, close the doors, and take off. But at the moment, I was up on top of the trap, and somebody else was going to open the door. And so I was all ready with my camera, going to get some good close-up pictures of this bear. You know, I pictured him jumping up and looking around at us or whatever. And so they swung open the door and they dove back inside the truck, and I'm up at the top, but I could have gotten down and in the truck. And he just laid in that. He didn't even care to get out. He just laid in there. He didn't come out. And so finally, we had to get down behind it with sticks and poke that bear and poke him until we made him uncomfortable enough. He finally went out the other side, and then he left so fast I didn't get one picture. But anyway, we've been around wildlife and things, and that's nature's an amazing thing, and I feel bad for city kids that have never been out in the woods and in the wild. Parks are nice, and zoos are great to see animals, but nothing is like being out there. I remember jumping over a log, probably as tall as this desk, 3 or 4 foot high log, and good sense in a wood situation, you don't jump over a log, you step on the top, and then you look, and then you jump over. Snakes will lie in the shaded areas, the bottom of a log, and you just vault it, and your feet are right next to a snake or whatever's laying there, and so usually you get on the top, look, and you jump, and you're a little bit away. But I wasn't thinking. Again, I was by myself that day, and I just put my hands on the top of the log and kind of vaulted over and landed right there, and right next to a bobcat, I'm going to say as big as a German Shepherd. It was an instantaneous event, so it's hard to say for sure. But big old bobcat, I jumped, landed right next to this bobcat, and looked at each other. We both took off running. Now, why he ran, I don't know. Why I ran, I don't know. I wasn't going to hurt him, and I couldn't outrun him. So, why would he run? Because I couldn't hurt him, and why would I run? As if I could get away from a bobcat if it did want to hurt me. But there's a lot of neat things out in the woods, and rattlesnakes and all kinds of things. But just a quick comment before I get to Proverbs 4. You want to know true bravery, it's those who will do the right thing when there's great risk attached, when this is the right thing to do, but you don't know the outcome. Bravery is that person who keeps doing right when things are not always going right. Bravery is the one who says, I will do my duty, though it is difficult, though it hurts, though I may not live through it, though I may suffer through it, but it's the thing to do. To me, a mother giving birth to a child and caring for that child and loving that child through all the inconvenience, all the difficulties. Our daughter-in-law is about to have would be our 12th grandchild, and giving birth's one thing, but caring for that child for the next 15 or 18 years, that's another thing. And then realizing you keep worrying about them and caring about them the rest of their life. My mom still cares and concerned about me and my brother, and I'm nearing 70. My brother just over 70. But the bravery is, there's a lot of things. I think of my wife, and when we came here to start this church, there wasn't a lot of risk because I've always been able to get a job. And if I couldn't get a church started, I'd get a job and provide for us. I had no doubts about that. That might have been arrogance, but I'd always had a job since I was a teenager, and I just didn't see that I could not get a job. Starting a church, I'd never done it before. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, but I knew I could. I knew I'd get a job. So her going with me to start a church, that was loyalty, and that was good. But I don't know how brave it was. But as the years passed, children were born, and the trials came, and opportunities came to go elsewhere. One time, I felt frustrated enough. For momentarily, I don't know if I really contemplated, but the thought crossed my mind of going somewhere else. And I'd had an offer to go back to work for our home church and then to take that church over, a great big church with a gym and a Christian school and a small college, and they had a radio station at camp. And I still think it would have been a wonderful opportunity. I don't know if it could have worked, but my pastor and I were dear friends right to his death. I spoke at his funeral. We were parallel, but I was right to the right enough. He would have been good with me being there. I didn't know if all the members would have been, but regardless, just once, and my wife was not at all compelled to have us bail out. Then one time, I remember we were sitting talking, and she said, if it's going to be like this, why don't we just go? And she didn't say go where, she just said go. And so only once she talked about going, once I talked about going, but doing the will of God is not supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be convenient. Doing the will of God makes him happy. Doing the will of God may not make us happy. Doing the will of God is that thing that is right. And in this case, through heartache and sorrows, I've seen my wife just go on faithful, loving me, loving her children, loving her grandchildren, loving our church. And I think bravery is someone who does the will of God and keeps doing the will of God decade after decade. We're at 43 years here now. And I believe my wife has shown bravery and a lot more intelligence than somebody who would take a switch and hit a bear on top of the head. But I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for so many of my church friends, family, and some of the staff have been with us for decades. It's hard to even believe that my oldest child, my son that's on our staff, this is his 20th year working for me. I can't even imagine that. I'm thinking if he'd have gone and got a job out in the world, he'd be qualifying for a retirement pension or something. But anyway, I love having him on staff and his family. I want to mention here in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, and just want to mention just quickly a quick verse or two here, and some things about people. Proverbs chapter 4, it talks about the path of the wicked in verse 14. Enter not into the path of the wicked, go not in the way of evil men. And by the way, if you weren't there Wednesday, our Wednesday Bible studies, we're going through Proverbs. We've talked in Proverbs often, like followed marriage advice, followed financial advice, followed things in regard to our children. But we're just going to drift straight through Proverbs. And I don't know how long we'll go, but we might go through all 31 chapters, we'll see. But so we'll be here in chapter 4 and spend more time at length on this later. But Proverbs 4:14, enter not into the path of the wicked, go not in the way of evil men. So there's some people, you don't want to be in their path. You don't want to travel like they travel. You don't want to be in the way with them. You don't want to be near them. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. 4, here's why you want to stay distant. There are people, you don't have to hate them, just don't be near them. You don't have to wish them ill. Just keep your distance. The idea that we need to all be hugging brothers and I had somebody come to church for a while, and he just hugged people. And I said, look, you can't just go hugging our ladies in our church. These ladies don't know you, and they don't want some strange man hugging. He said, well, we're all brothers. And I said, no, we don't know that. For all we know, you're a drug salesman. For all we know, you're a thief, a pickpocket, who knows what you are. And so don't go hugging ladies that don't want to get hugged. And, we're not supposed to be hugging on everybody. You're supposed to avoid some people. You're supposed to keep your distance from some people. And anyway, so he didn't come back to church, but he came a few times. Verse 16, why to avoid some people? For they sleep not except they've done mischief. Their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. Now just put that in respect to some of the political things we've seen, from the BLM riots to the current opposition to ICE. There are groups of people in their thinking. It's not an ethnic group. It's not I don't think it's just a political group, although I think it primarily is. But consider the groups of people that everything surrounding them is violence and anger and bitterness and cursing. Some of our political leaders, they're so mad at what the opposing party was doing that they're using language as if they could prove themselves somebody, something, I don't know what, and they're using language that never is acceptable in public. And these are senators and congressmen and congresswomen, and vulgar and filthy language. Now you just need to consider these people who attack the ICE facilities, or attacked police stations and police cars, or attack private businesses. Sometimes when the riots have gone on in the past here in California, there have been just horrible, and not just in California, there's some across the country, riots and people that tear up businesses and destroy cars and burn things. Well, it tells you who these people are. It says they sleep not except they've done mischief. Their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. These people want to hurt people. They want to ruin people's name. They want to hurt people physically. They want to hurt people in their careers or in their families. The very idea that you'd take somebody who's doing his job, say working for immigration, and want to find out who the person is so you can go to their home and scare their spouse and their children. That's evil. That's what this is talking about. Those people, you're supposed to avoid those people. We're supposed to have nothing to do with those people, because those people are corrupt. He says in verse 17, for they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. It's like their food and their drink is wickedness and violence. They just want to be violent. They want to cause trouble. They want to hurt people. Verse 18 tells you of the other side, which right now politically you could put these in two parties pretty much. But the path of the just is as a shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness, they know not at what they stumble. The just aren't trying to destroy people. The just aren't trying to physically hurt people. The just aren't trying to destroy people's careers. But the wicked, it's all about violence. It's all about anarchy. It's all about hurting and tearing up. And it's an interesting thing in recent days politically, how the things that the conservatives are saying that are being so attacked, that we're in a day of recorded information. And you just go back 10 or 15 years and you find that the liberals were saying the very same thing 10, 15, 20 years ago that the conservatives are saying today, only now the liberals are throwing a fit about it. And of course, there's an evolution in political parties always, or not always, but there's been trends in things getting worse and worse. But I just was reading this thinking, when somebody goes out to hurt people, to destroy people, they don't sleep and rest unless they cause somebody to fall. Christians, it ought to be our job to lift people up. Now and someone might say, well, that these people who are arresting illegal folks, and by the way, I've got some dear friends who, as far as I understand, I'm willing to guess they're probably not legal, but I'm not talking about people who are breaking the law, and they're, a guy's a bank robber, I'm not going to embrace him and call him my best friend. Somebody who's a murderer, a thief, or whatever. But those people need to be arrested. They need to be thrown in jail. They need to be tried legally. But for me to go out and grab a policeman and hit him with a baseball bat, or attack him, threaten his life, have a bunch of people surround a police car and threaten the person's life, no, that's not right. The violence, the anger, that's all wickedness. We have elections. We have a president. We have a constitution. We have state laws. We have federal laws. And I don't want my enemies. There's some people who really don't like me, and I don't understand it. I think I like me, but I still couldn't wish ill on them. I couldn't even imagine. I would want nothing more than their marriage to be happy and their children to be happy, and I want nothing more than I would like them to get right with God, or maybe to get saved. They might not be saved, but I'd like them to be close to God. I'd like them to know God and to glorify God. I can't even imagine wanting to hurt people because Jesus is that way. Over in I think it's Ezekiel, he says, the Lord takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. There's a day coming when the judgment seat of the great white throne judgment, when the lost will be cast into hell. That is the last straw. God gives the unsaved opportunity after opportunity to get saved. God doesn't take any pleasure in the lost dying and the lost going to hell. That he sent his son to die for those people. He loves those people. And he warns us as Christians, there's some people, we should avoid their path. We should avoid their way, or where they're going, what they're doing, because they're just causing grief. Over in Proverbs chapter 1, you read about the guy who says, don't go with them. Don't go with them. They're going to we can go over here and rob from these people and steal this, and we'll get gain. And the warning in Proverbs, don't go with them. My son, consent thou not. And we ought to be so very careful with who we run with. But you see it I think you see it sometimes in marriage situations where a spouse just wants to hurt their spouse. I could not. Now, and there's no question my wife and I can frustrate each other at times, but I don't want her hurt. I wouldn't do anything to try and destroy her, and I don't know anybody that I would want evil or hurt to be on them. That is so godless a thinking. Now, we need to be very careful that we keep a Christ-like spirit. Jesus died for sinners. He didn't die for good people. He died for bad people. And God so loved the world. And that's how we ought to be. And great missionaries throughout history on many occasions have gone to a place where they were beaten up, threatened, family members killed, sometimes a missionary's killed, and then another family of missionaries comes to try and reach them. Maybe 2 or 3 missionaries later, they finally get saved. We don't hate people. We want people to know Christ. And we want people to have a chance for eternal life. I don't think God is happy in the least with the death of even the wicked. He may cause them to die. He may create governments that take their lives. And of course, eternally, there'll be eternal death for those who refuse Christ. But God so loved the world. And let's keep our love for our church, for the Christian brethren. Let's keep our love for the world, caring for the world around us. And I know you're going to get frustrated by people sometimes, but we can get over it. Let's don't let that bitterness rest in our hearts.